Hello chess friends and welcome to Jozarov chess channel and welcome back to the Chess Olympiad in 2024 that's going on now in the beautiful town of Budapest in Hungary. We're now in the round 8 of this epic chess event, and after the first 7 rounds, the leader of this event is of course Team India. India secured every win in every round, which is really incredible performance. And yesterday in the epic match, in the immortal match against China, they secured also a win in which Gukesh won his game with the white pieces in a spectacular endgame against VG on the first board. All of the other 3 games ended with a draw. I think this was now the most important match of this event, because when we watch now the lineups of every team, I think the only team that could somehow spice up the event against India was actually Team China. And now in the direct duel of rivals, I would say India secured a win and has now clear path in this Chess Olympiad in 2024. But today India played against Iran. Iran, after the first seven rounds, had 6 wins and only 1 draw, which means if Iran now wins this game, they would actually overtake India and would be on the first place. So still a tense battle, and we're following now the spectacular game on the first board between Parham Maghsoodloo against Gukesh. Really crazy game with great theoretical value, but also with the spectacular trap by Gukesh and also incredible tactics in the middle game stage. So put your seatbelts on. Really a crazy game from the round 8 of the Chess Olympiad in 2024. Let's see now what happened with the white pieces. Parham Maghsoodloo opened with the move d4, d5 by Gukesh, c4, e6, queen's gambit decline, and now after move knight to c3, we have now the Tarrasch defense with the move c5. We have c takes d5, which is basically many times a good choice here by white, because after e takes d5, in some lines you can always secure after potential d takes c5 to leave black maybe with the isolated d pawn, which is many times in the middle game stage a strategic disadvantage. Then of course your opponent, if you have yourself maybe an isolated d pawn, then your opponent could attack this pawn. It becomes of course a strategic disadvantage. So here knight to f3 by Parham Maghsoodloo, we have knight to f6, g3, we have now knight to c6, and now after bishop to g2 we have now the so-called Prague variation. We have c takes d4, knight takes d4, and now after move bishop to c5 we have reached now the so-called Dubov Tarrasch, named by Daniil Dubov. I'm really glad that Daniil Dubov, such a spectacular player, has a name of its own opening here. Bishop to c5 is really a dynamic approach. The game is probably going to explode now in the center of the board after a couple more moves. So very tough to play now this position for both sides. But I wanted to show you also here a little bit the game from white's perspective. I have a decent approach, I think, myself, that I studied at home, that I wanted to show you against the Dubov Tarrasch, how you can make progress and have, I think, a simplified and solid way here with the white pieces. So here after bishop to c5 that Gukesh played, Parham Maghsoodloo plays the best move, knight to b3, hits now the bishop, and now the bishop drops back, and now finally kingside castling. d4, knight to a4, hitting now the bishop. Look at this, also hitting the weakness now that black has in the position, which is now the c5 square. White is in many occasions, even in some lines, trying to cement the position around the square c5. Then also you have bishop to f4. So you see the position is really dynamic with tactical possibilities all over the board. So we have now kingside castling, and now comes I would say the first really important deviation in the opening stage. Here Parham Maghsoodloo plays rook to e1. And in my opinion, the best way here for white to proceed is now to move bishop to g5. There is a beautiful game played in 2019 in which Magnus Carlsen played an awesome game against the Dubov Tarrasch, against Daniil Dubov. Here after bishop to g5, I wanted to show you just shortly here a line that you could maybe apply if you maybe facing this opening. Then after h6 that could happen, you simply hit the bishop, and after something like a takes b6 you hit also the knight. As I said, this is now a simplified way to go into the middle game stage. And now after queen to d4 you have gained the pawn. You have, of course, a little bit here light square problems because you lost the light square bishop, but then after something like queen to d8, you can play queen to c3, rook to d1 here, and then knight to c1, knight to d3, f3, e4, and you could have slowly but surely a really nice setup from white's perspective. I think it's then tough position also for black to play. You have to compensate somehow your loss of a pawn in the middle game stage. So this is my suggestion for you, maybe here to go into this line. So okay, after kingside castling, here Parham Maghsoodloo didn't play bishop to g5. Here he simply played a calm rook to e1, but now here Gukesh is saying you had your chance to play bishop to g5. Now it's not the same position anymore. Here Gukesh shows that he's well prepared. He plays now the move h6. Is not allowing any of the simplified lines now here for white, and I think from this point on the game is getting very powerful here in the middle game stage. Bishop to f4. Parham Maghsoodloo has to now go somewhere with the bishop. We have now bishop to e6, and now after knight from b to c5. As we mentioned, this is also an approach by white. Here Parham Maghsoodloo hits now the pawn on b7, but now Gukesh will try here a dirty spectacular trap. Here he played the beautiful bishop to d5, and this move is so tough now to handle. You have to be really accurate now in your calculations, because if you make a tiny little mistake, you could get destroyed in the early stage of the game. Look at this. After bishop to d5, knight takes b6, first of all by Parham Maghsoodloo, perfectly fine, nothing wrong about this move. And after a takes b6, knight to b7, here by Parham Maghsoodloo, he gained the pawn, but you see now the knight on b7 is suddenly a little bit exposed. It's really not so well placed. The only escape square that you have is actually on the square d6, and this d6 square is of course protected by the bishop on f4, but the bishop on f4 is a little bit also exposed, can be also hit with the move g5. So now suddenly white is on the downside, took a pawn, but has now tough time to get the knight back into the game. What should you do here after knight to b7? What here you cannot do is, instead of this move knight to b7, you cannot actually play knight to b3. This wouldn't be good. You actually have to go into this line that probably Gukesh somewhere has prepared here. After knight to b3, then bishop to g2, then we play simply rook to e8, queen to d3. Look at this, we kick away the bishop, we get the queen centralized. You have to weaken now the further your structure, and now I think white has a really tough time to face this progress of blacks. Maybe in some lines we can push the pawn further here. A rook battery could happen here. Very messy position here for white. So that's why after a takes b6, the best way actually is here for white to pick up now the pawn, but you have to be really accurate, as I said, now in the continuation of the game. Queen to d7. Gukesh is attacking now here the knight on b7, and now comes the powerful trap here that Gukesh has prepared. Look at this. If you try here bishop to d5, this wasn't played in the game. Parham Maghsoodloo got out of this mess. But look at this, bishop to d5 is so crazy, because after knight to d5, we're going to go with your knight. If you try bishop to d6, then of course we'll simply play knight to e7, and the knight is lost. So you cannot go anywhere. If you try, of course, knight to d6, then we simply pick up the piece, and then here again the knight is hanging again. Game over, I would say, here for white. So you see, after queen to d7, you have to be really accurate, and here Parham Maghsoodloo plays the only move, e4. This is the way to go. We have d takes e3, but now Parham doesn't react correctly. So far, I would say it's an equal game, but now Parham makes his really first important mistake in the game. He plays now rook to e3. And this move, rook to e3, in the beginning seems like a logical idea, that you're getting the rook into the game. You're probably trying, of course, maybe to build yourself a battery on the d file, a queen and rook battery. But the issue is actually that you are vulnerable here from white's perspective on the d-file mass. You are actually vulnerable on the back ranks. Here, what's a better choice? Let's see now the better choice here for Parham. F takes e3 should have been played, and then after something like queen to b7, you can still pick up this piece. Even if you get challenged on the d-file, still you have e4 as a resource, and I would say equal game for both sides. Nothing dramatic is going on. Or maybe if you get challenged like this by black, knight to b4, then you still can play bishop to d5. After knight to d5, you still have e4 as a resource, and again probably white will pick up this one. You pick up also the knight. You have maybe extra material, but white's king is a little bit exposed. So again, I would say equal chances for both sides. But after rook to e3, what here Gukesh did was really a good move. Knight to b4. Here we have knight to d6. Parham Maghsoodloo is desperately trying now to get the knight back into the game. Bishop to g2, king to g2, and now a rook from a to d8. And you see now the problem that I've talked about. In the beginning, it seemed so that actually Parham could have taken over on the d file, but actually black is taking over on the d file. Now this queen and rook battle on the d file is something that bothers now white in the continuation of the game, and you don't have access to the d3 square because the knight is protecting the square. Really crazy line that Gukesh showed here. Rook to b3, counter attack by Parham. We have knight to d5, hitting the bishop, which is of course the protector of the knight. Bishop to e5. Here Parham stays connected somehow to his knight. Queen to e6. Gukesh continues the pressure. Queen to d4. Again Parham protects it, but you see now black is really much better already in the game. And here I think Gukesh has an easy plan. Here he should have simply played rook takes d6. Rook takes d6 and bishop to d6 would lead then into this line, in which again Gukesh would have two knights against the rook. And you know, yesterday Gukesh played a similar endgame against VG, so probably Gukesh thought, no, I'm not going to play again a similar endgame. It was too tough yesterday. Maybe I'll try to do something else. Probably a little bit scared because of this epic endgame yesterday. But okay, here after queen to d4, Gukesh allows here, I would say, here Parham to get back into the game. Still, I would say even in this line, black should be better, but it was unnecessary. Knight to g4 was not the best move. Obviously, here rook takes d6 and then picking up two pieces for the loss of the rook. After knight to g4, here Parham continues with rook to d1. Knight to e7, good move again by Gukesh. You see now the knight cannot escape. You're simply pinned here on the d file. We have now bishop to g7. Again, at least Parham takes out now the pawn on g7. We have now knight to f5, an attack against the queen, but also against the knight. We have queen to f4, and now knight takes g7. And actually, in this whole sequence, here Gukesh gained the piece, but now Parham has also the opportunity to pick up this pawn on b6. And you see now, white has a decent compensation, I would say, for the lost piece. Has now 3 pawns still on the board, and these 2 pawns are connected, so these pawns will probably start a roll here on the queen side. So really unpleasant position also for black, because there is still the tension here on the 6th rank. There's also maybe the possibility to somehow hit the queen. Really unnecessary, I would say, problems now for Gukesh. He had everything in his hands, and now he has to again play a really tough endgame. Here after rook takes b6, we have now f5 here by Parham Maghsoodloo, h3. The issue here is that you cannot play knight to c4. Knight to c4 seems really tempting. You, of course, liberate the 6th rank, you attack the queen, but black, for instance, in this particular position would have a powerful line with rook to d1. Then after something like rook takes e6, you can even sack the queen, but now we pick up this one. After queen to f3, you have a great follow-up, rook to f1. This is the way to go. This would be then the immortal sequence here. Unfortunately, for the beauty of the game, this didn't happen, but obviously if you take here, then knight takes h2 and it would be game over. White is down the whole rook, and it's simply unplayable anymore. So here, this would be then epic. Here after rook to f1, this would be game over. So that's why here Parham Maghsoodloo has to play h3, kick away this unpleasant knight from g4, knight to e5, and now here Parham makes another mistake. Again, I would say this is playable for white. This is not such a bad position, because you have the opportunity to play something like a4. Suddenly you let these pawns roll, and still we have to also mention black has these knights on the board, which are of course not so good against this outside distant pass pawns on the edge of the board. So here Parham Maghsoodloo had at least some kind of a chance in the game, but he played now a huge blunder with knight to c4. And now actually this whole concept with knight to c4 is not working anymore. Now eventually you will lose the queen, and now these tactics are not working. So it's not the same position like in the previous one. You can maybe pick up this one, we pick up this one, maybe this one is hanging, but then also this one is hanging. So this whole sequence that we have seen previously suddenly it's not working anymore here for black. But Gukesh is not falling for anything. He first of all plays queen takes c4. We have now rook to d8, rook takes d8, and there's not so much that can be done. You can just prolong the game, I would say, with queen to c4, but then after knight to c4, White is down now 2 minor pieces. Here, Parham Maghsoodloo tried queen to e5, which is now unplayable position anymore. Rook to d1, great move here by Gukesh. He has still this powerful knight here that's protecting the king. Even if you try to do some kind of a battery, then obviously queen to c6 wins the piece. And again, game over here for White. So that's why for rook to b3 was played by Parham Maghsoodloo, but now queen to f1, and now White is running into checkmate sequence. Even here, king to h1, king to f4, and now after rook to d5 in this particular position, Parham Maghsoodloo resigned. What's the issue actually? Why did again White resign? Here this square is taken. This square you cannot also use because you get a check here on h5 with the knight, so this is also not working. You can maybe again step back here, trying somehow to protect the e4 square, because if you don't do that, if you try something like, I don't know, queen to, if you try to somehow let's see here, step back to c7 or something, then you get checkmated immediately on e4. So you have to stay actually somehow on the e file in order to protect the e4 square. But now you get a check, and look at this, you're already in the checkmate net, and now you have to pick up the piece. And now after queen to e4, this would be then again game over here for White. Great game, great attack here by Gukesh with the black pieces, sacrificing a pawn, going into wild line and an open battle. Really crazy game. And this game actually showed me that I think Gukesh is ready to win the World Chess Championship in 2024. I don't want to predict anything. I don't want to, I don't know, say that maybe even that Gukesh is a top favorite against Dingler in the World Chess Championship, but I think he's ready. He's so well prepared in these openings, and when he won the candidate, still I wasn't maybe so convinced, because it's just a tournament. But how he's making progress, how he's playing now also in the last couple of months, look at this. With this win against Parham Maghsoodloo, Gukesh gained many rating points in this event. He gained already 20 points and can be now also maybe a part of the 2800 rating club. Gukesh didn't play one game in this event. The first round he didn't play. He has still gained 6.5 points out of the 7 rounds that he played on the first board for Team India, which is an incredible performance. I think his rating performance is about 3,200 points. Incredible stuff what he's doing here. Also, Arjun Ergaisi won his game today, so now Arjun has I think 7 out of 8, or maybe 7.5, I'm not sure. He played 2 draws, I think, Arjun, or maybe 1 draw, I'm not sure anymore. But Arjun has also great performance here. Queen to e4 ends the game here. He played an awesome really Tarrasch defense with the black pieces against such a strong opponent, Parham Maghsoodloo. As I said, he is now ready for the World Chess Championship in 2024 against Ding. So, okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. I really enjoyed it a lot. Interesting ideas of the Dubov Tarrasch here by Gukesh. If you want to see some other beautiful Gukesh games and also by Arjun Ergaisi from this event, check out our coverage. Here are some games that we have analyzed before. And if you like this content, hit the subscribe button. See you soon with some more videos, and what do we say in the end? Chess is the best, of course.